movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being. Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and you might notice a little something different. We are not in my office. We are outside. I'm smoking a cigar, a Padron Anniversary series, for you guys who know cigar things. And why? Why are we doing this? Why am I doing this? One is because I wanted to let you know that this is a new beginning for Men at the Movies. We're going to a monthly pace, a monthly cadence. We are hopefully going to be doing some of this shooting where we might be outside, might be smoking cigars, might be around a fire pit. Having more of a conversation about the movies that mean something to a person than just simply sort of breaking them down. As one of my friends says, two nerds sitting in an office talking about movies. But there's more to it. Because if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, like literally the last minute, you know that we believe that the stories you love are gateways to see yourself and God in new ways. And I felt like after 5 years of doing this, God kind of was like, put up or shut up. Do you really believe that? I do. So then what are we going to do about it? Because the stories you love aren't random, and neither are you. They reveal a pattern. They act like a mirror of who you long to be. And part of my passion in my heart is helping people understand that. Who is it God's called them to be, and how can we unlock your story? Because really, it's been locked up in your heart for a long time. You feel sort of like Neo. It's like a splinter in your brain, and you just can't figure out what to do with it. If you go to unlockyourstory.org, click the button, and you'll get your free archetype. And I don't mean like a one-word sentence. This isn't a Facebook quiz about which friend are you. This is something specific for every person. If you like tailor-made, if you like bespoke, whatever word, because you are an individual, your story is an individual, and so the stories that so the person that your stories are leading to is also individual, fitted just for you. That's the first step. We are still building the rest of it. It goes all the way up to a complete story profile, which is like 180 pages of stuff that will just blow your mind. If you want that, you can email me about it and we can figure out what that looks like. My sample is in there to look at. If you're a glutton for punishment, you can look at all 180 something pages there. But we're building it. This is the ground floor. And so this is why I'm smoking a cigar today. Because after 24 hours, there have been 0 responses. Mainly because the original podcast was put in podcast jail because I have music in there. So I was pretty disappointed this morning seeing nobody had put in any responses. And I thought, what am I going to do? I don't know when that podcast is going to be released. There's no way you can post bond, get out on bail, or anything like that. So I prayed about it. I felt like God invited me out here. Play around with one of your new cameras, smoke a cigar, and invite people in. So what I'm going to do is share 2 behind-the-scenes footage. If you're a Buy Me a Coffee supporter, you can get access to these pre-show. They're about 30, 40 minutes of conversation before the conversation. Sometimes I'd say before I hit the record button, but obviously I hit the record button first. And sometimes we get deeper in the pre-show than we do in the show, which is saying something. So the first part is going to be from my conversation with Sam a couple episodes ago. We were talking about Field of Dreams, and he asked me, how did you get into this? How did this start? And I sort of put that in the back pocket of, that's kind of an interesting thing, but I didn't want to pull attention away from the Wild at Heart series. And then the other conversation was with Eric, who we talked about Star Wars: A New Hope. And in it, he asked me a question of who my favorite superhero is. Because very similarly, who your favorite superhero is tells you something about who you are, who you want to be. There's a reason guys want to be like John McClane or Aragorn or Sam, or take your pick, William Wallace, Neo. There's a reason. And so Eric and I talked about that before we even talked about the movie. And Eric had a book, A Lion Raised a Lamb, about how he was raised in like safety by a mother who loved him by keeping him safe. And pointed out, it's sort of what happened with Luke Skywalker. He was born to be a Jedi Knight. He had all this amazing power, but he was raised by, Uncle Owen, keeping him safe on the farm, keeping him far away from the rebellion, far away from danger. He was like, wow, the book that he wrote, the life that he lived, is actually echoed in Luke Skywalker. And so that, again, brings us back to unlockyourstory.org. We are building something. It is going to be awesome. I call it 1,000-acre wood. Today is just the doorway. So I invite you to walk in it with me. You don't have to smoke a cigar or sit by a fire pit or do anything like that. All you do is tell me your 3 favorite stories, what character you'd want in your corner if, stuff hits the fan, and we go from there. I promise you'll see something you hadn't seen before. And that's just in the first email. It gets better after that. And speaking of getting better, that's enough of me talking. We're going to go with the conversation that I had with Sam, and then we'll go into the conversation I had with Eric. Hope you enjoy it.
So how'd you start doing this? Remind me again, kind of how you got into this.
So years ago, when the first time I sort of got into this message was in September of 2013, going to our, it's a Wild at Heart style boot camp here in Charlotte. And that was the first time I saw, movie clips used to sort of share the gospel, share these themes, just like they do at a boot camp.
Right.
And that was something that really struck me. And I've always loved movies. Mm-hmm. And over the years, just sort of, that was an idea that we batted around with sort of some of my friends. I had a different podcast for guys who went to our event to feed them in between, what do we do in the 6 months in between an event? It was like, all right, we'll see you next time. And I'm like, well, let's offer them a podcast where they can at least hear some of the message and get encouraged along the way. And that was, so with the guys that I did that with, we had this idea to go do deep dives into movies.
Yeah.
And had it with another guy and just I wasn't ready for it. I had to go through some growth internally. Because doing that was some chasing of my own validation.
Yeah.
And so I gave it up for a little while. And then a friend of mine from Atlanta, Britt, who probably has done over half of these episodes with me. We've now done over 200 episodes. He reached out. He's like, hey, this window's opened up. I think I have space to do this. You want to do this? And this was in, late 2020. We had nothing better to do back then. So started doing this and just little by little figured some stuff out and took stuff that I learned from the first time I did the podcast to this. And when the show opens, we have intro music, and I sort of cobbled quotes that actually came from John Eldridge's book, Epic, about how the movies we love are gateways to who God created us to be. Mm. And so that's our whole intention is, and I was talking to somebody this last weekend. I was able to go to the muster with Pablo and was talking about movies. And it's like, if you actually talk about a movie somebody loves and start asking them why and what they love about it, like it can get really intimate really quick. Mm-hmm. Because you're touching something really deep and core to who they are.
Right.
And yeah, just over the years as I've walked with God in this, and it's like, okay, I've laid a lot of things down, but this is something He really hasn't allowed me to put down, and has been an encouragement to a lot of people, and has been an encouragement to me because I get to have these incredible conversations that are great in the moment, but then even going back editing, I'm amazed how many times Father has provided. He's like, oh, I needed this conversation. I needed to hear this conversation I had 3 months ago. I needed to hear it today to encourage me in my walk with Him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's kind of the shortened version of the story. I rarely tell short stories, so.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool that you, that you did that, because it's neat that's, in the day to day we get a little disconnected from that stuff, and to just how quickly something like story can bring us back to, okay, so that's what's true, and that's the main theme here, and because boy, it sure can get lost, and it's thank God for story and film and things like that, conversations with friends, or go, oh yeah, that's right, and then the other part that I'm always kind of amazed at and smiling at is that through this, through Wild at Heart and John's stuff, and how God's used that to kind of restate the gospel, and that you can have a conversation with guys you don't even know very well at all, but you've got this shared experience through this message that you can go right there real quick. It's like, wow, that's, that usually takes years or a lot of, a few beers or something for people to kind of go, okay, I see you, you see me, and we can have some pretty significant conversation and connection without a whole lot of history.
Wow. That's sorry, as you were talking, that idea of His constant pursuit of our hearts.
Yeah.
And realizing that's this movie. That's Field of Dreams. Is the pursuit of Roy's heart.
Yeah.
Of his wife, his family, of the dad, right? Restored their relationship, restored Shoeless Joe, restored all these guys.
Yeah.
And even the Terry and Moonlight Graham, it's it's a pursuit of their heart, ease his pain. Well, every person that was contacted, that was drawn to the Field of Dreams, to this Iowa cornfield, their pain was eased.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's what we've both experienced through this new perspective on the gospel that John sort of kicked off. And as we chase this deeper intimacy with God, I think that's our story is just one of a relentless pursuit of a loving Father, not a nameless voice.
Right. Yeah.
Story is part of my life.
Right.
As we'll talk about, and I love that you're getting into, where is the story? Where does it relate to? What are your favorite clips? And really, I have a question that I ask everybody when I do a corporate talk or a workshop, even when I start working one-on-one with somebody, and I ask them, who's your favorite superhero or fantasy character or whatever? So I would ask Paul, who's yours? Who's your favorite superhero, fantasy character, or mythological character, or whatever?
It would probably have to be Gandalf.
I love that.
Probably
Gandalf's
where I land.
I don't think I've ever gotten Gandalf when I've asked. So mine is Batman. So I always use Batman. For I got a little Batman figure there. But let me ask you. So Gandalf, give me a couple of reasons, 2-3 reasons why Gandalf's your favorite.
He sees the truth. He knows what's coming. He spends the time, even researching the ring, right? He does all the research, and so he knows he sees the bigger picture, right? And he's trying to, he sees the potential in the people, especially the hobbits, right? Whether it's Bilbo or Frodo or Sam. Even he stood up for Pippin and Merry to go on the adventure, the wasn't an adventure, but whatever. I can't
journey,
remember. The journey, yeah.
Yes.
And like he's, even with Theoden, right? He brings him back to life. Like he sees who they could be and calls them out to it.
Yeah.
And I've never put words to it like that before. So that's kind of cool.
Well, it's a great exercise. And I'll tell you, there was a guy who's the mentor of my mentor and the co-author of the book. And this guy's name is Harry Palmer. And Harry is just an amazing guy and an enlightened being. And Harry says, and he's also a huge comic book fan. And he says, tell me who your superhero is, and I will tell you who you are. And so does that sound like you, Gandalf?
Probably who I long to be, right?
Well, there's that too.
Right.
So actually, you're not wrong. That's part of it. And what Harry says is, it's either who you are or who you strive to be. And, it's in all of us. Like, I love Batman. And one of the things I love about him is, he's the world's greatest detective. So he sees all the details. He figures everything out. He's the only one in the Justice League who's not superhuman, right? He's just a mortal guy. And it was his drive and his ambition and his want for vengeance and then ultimately justice that drove him to become who he was. He's also got a lot of really neat toys. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he's always like, if it's going to be done, it's got to be me. Like I'm the one that's going to get this done. Right. And that in a lot of ways is me. And that's who I am. And I found that asking this question, who is your superhero? And I do this, like I said, in all the workshops and talks and things that I do, is you kind of get to know yourself a little bit. Right. And it's why we're drawn to these characters. It's why we're drawn to these stories. And if we're not there yet, it's who we strive to be, but it's in there already. It's just about letting that out. Right. So what I loved about your podcast was, hey, let's get into these movies that we love as men and look at why do we love these movies? What about the characters draws us in? Who do they represent in in us and in our lives? And why do these certain scenes really talk to us, speak to us, and hit us here in the heart? And that was, when they presented yours to me, I was like, oh man, I gotta absolutely I want to get on that one. That one sounds like a ton of fun. So because it relates to what I already do, and I think it's fantastic.
Right. Well, and I appreciate your grace and understanding as we rescheduled multiple times. Sure. It's really interesting. Over the last couple months, I'm actually been developing this concept of, I've been working on a book for years called Unlock Your Story, and it actually uses the hero's journey as our sort of roadmap for transformation and looking at these movies. And I use A New Hope as like, this is the roadmap. This is the Joseph Campbell's, hero's journey. But as I've dug into using the AIs a little more, I was just like, hey, I really love these books. Recommend more like this. I love these stories. Yeah. Recommend more like this. And so come up with like a top 25 because I'm a nerd. I don't want a top 10. I want a top 25. And then I did the reverse engineering. It's like, what does this say about me? That like, what characters are I drawn to?
Yeah.
And it was so eye-opening of what I'm drawn to, what I'm like how I'm wired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just through answering a few questions about my favorite stories. So I was like, I think that this could be a really cool thing. So I've invited some beta users to say, here's an intake form. Tell me about your favorite stories. I'll give you a top 10 movies, TV shows, and books. See what you've seen, read. What did you think? We have a short conversation to say, okay, let's dive into this. Here's some of your core story profile. And then after that conversation, we get this full image fleshed out of here's who you are in just from telling me what your favorite stories are.
Yeah. See, that's
it's so
very
cool.
similar to what we just did, right? I mean, it's
right.
That's the thing. And,
yeah.
I love that you love Joseph Campbell because he drives a lot of what I do. Like when you mentioned, how did I get here? And, we're all on this journey. I call it the software of our soul.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
Campbell wrote, he's most well known for The Power of Myth.
Mhm.
And then he wrote The Hero with 1,000 Faces.
Yep.
Right. And which essentially was basically him saying every story is every story is every story.
Yep.
Right. And it was all following that hero's journey, which is what he came up with, that kind of circle, starting here and then going into the abyss and getting out and facing the challenge and the death and rebirth and then the gift of the goddess and coming back, returning the hero.
And then starting all over again.
And listen, we have these journeys in our life. I tell people like, your marriage is, a hero's journey. Your career is a hero's journey. All of these things are these journeys that we all go through. And, I remember distinctly that, so Campbell was a professor of mythology, and I think it was UCLA or USC. Almost positive. It's
one of those California ones.
Yeah, it was one of those California ones. I think it was USC, but George Lucas was a student there.
Yeah.
And he wanted to write a space myth. So he wanted to take these myths and legends and then turn them into a space myth. And it was so brilliant. And I think because it speaks to our soul, which is what Campbell was saying, is that's why all these myths and legends are told in this way. Mm-hmm. This is why they're structured like this. There's the hero. There's the magical, wizard, mentor, archetype that's in there that guides them. There is some sort of mystical thing that's there. There is the villain, right? And then the challenge against the villain. There are the friends that help out, that come along on the journey. And then there is that, where they're just at the bottom and I can't do this anymore. I'm done. This is awful. And then they find that courage and they find that, we call the gift of the goddess, which is the heart, the passion, that moves them forward and gets them back up. And they finally, succeed in the challenge, defeat the enemy, the villain, the whatever, and return home as the hero and the king. And, and that's, that's all our lives. We're all the hero of our own story. Right. It's an amazing, thing that we go through these, but then we're drawn to these stories. And so, the first Star Wars, A New Hope, when you and I first, got in contact, and I said, that was one of the seminal movies in my life. I would love to talk about that. And you said, no one's brought that one up before. And I went, that just can't be. It's just so classic and such a, classic myth that it's that story that tells us who we are, who our friends are, gets us through this journey. So yeah, man, I love what you're doing with that, with the stories, because it is who we are. And at the very base of it, the very foundation, it is myths and legends are how people learned to become their own king and queen. So yeah, that's why I love this movie so much.
Going back to the hero's journey, we have to die to who we were to become who we're supposed to be.
1,000%.
And
1,000%, yes.
That one of my favorite scenes from the Lord of the Rings is when Elrond shows up and he's like, the ranger has to die so you can become the king.
Yep. And Aragorn goes through all these different, like who he is.
That's what makes those stories so awesome, is like each character has their own arc.
Yes.
The villain is kind of really the MacGuffin in the movie, and just like Sauron has no depth. But every other character is like really interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's what really gets me in, the Star Wars trilogy, and I'm going to talk about the original trilogy mostly, because I really was not a fan of the other six. I watched them. I watched all of them, and they were great. But the thing for me in the original trilogy, and especially even in A New Hope, and then I think it even goes deeper in the second one, is the growth that all of those characters go through is remarkable in just one film. And, Luke going from this farm boy who just like wants to becoming, a Jedi. Like he realizes this is my path, to Han Solo being, and I love his archetype. Han Solo is the, the rogue
Scoundrel.
character, right? The scoundrel, the rogue.
You need more scoundrels.
And he's supposed to realize, man, I have a real part in this.
Yeah.
Right. I have a real purpose in this. And Leia, Princess Leia is a great character. And she starts out really strong, right? Because, she's the one that sends the message and she's the one that has the strength and knows she has to get that out. But even by the end, she's found a little bit of her heart too.
Yeah.
Through
right.
home, right. So she's growing and maturing. And I think, that's why it's so beautifully written and done, is that you have this growth. They've gone through, maybe not their entire journey, but they've gone through a big part of their hero's journey in that movie, and the lessons that it teaches without telling, right? That's what I love about it too, because in a lot of these books and movies, and you know this because you read a lot.
You got all the exposition.
Right. They do the exposition. I love that.
Oh, you couldn't have showed me this.
And then when you watch the movie, I love, like, when you didn't know, that to me, teasing it out over the movie, watching the growth, feeling it and understanding it on a soul level, there's nothing greater than that, from a story. And to me, A New Hope is an incredible example of that.
That was just our warm-up. Whenever Spotify releases that episode, you're going to get the full conversation Eric and I had about Star Wars: A New Hope. And what I'm especially excited about is that last minute where that question that comes to Luke as he's going down the trench and Obi-Wan invites him to turn off the computer. He said, that's the moment we all have of, am I really who I think I am? It's good stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this little warm-up, this behind the scenes cut, but more importantly, I hope you go check out unlockyourstory.org. The stories you love aren't random, neither is yours. Go find out what they mean at unlockyourstory.org, click the button, and see how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?